Attention, new command report created.
This is Space Station 13. It's got to be one of the most emergent and paranoid-laden experiences in a video game, especially given it's free and multiplayer. There's already a great review for it on YouTube, but it's one of those games where everyone's perspective and experience differs, so let's get into it. I got introduced to the game back in 2013 through a friend, but the game itself goes way back to 2003, back when its engine Beyond wasn't that old. Originated by one person, EX80V1 as an atmospheric simulator, 2006 saw him give the code to other programmers to further develop it in his absence. Throughout the years, the game slowly became more popular, from just a few people around to even over 100 nowadays. The game's code evolved along with the rise of various servers as well. You have servers which aim to build upon Space Station 13, and you also have spin-off games using the SS13 code, such as Fallout 13, Colonial Marines and LifeWeb, but I'll say more about those later. On to the basics for now. The premise is that you're one of many players on board a corporate space station. Realistically, all you need to do is your job and survive to the end of a round. Sounds simple? Well, it's not. The game comes off looking cartoonish, the engine old and clunky, and the game's purpose vague, which are all correct. The game will run on pretty much any computer, but will perform poorly regardless of hardware. The Beyond engine in general just doesn't handle lots of players or long rounds very well, and rounds can go for several hours at a time. So there's gonna be a bit of game lag and unresponsiveness, it's just how it is. If you look at the other games that Beyond runs, you'll get a better feel for what it's intended for. Beyond is like RPG Maker but free and multiplayer. Space Station 13 is really an outlier in comparison. So somehow, despite how the game looks, runs, and generally feels, it still ends up being one of the best online games ever. While the gameplay is all on the screen to the left, the other half consists of text and options. The tabs on top are only sometimes useful in game, most of it is meta information. You'll need to keep an eye on the chat though, since this is where you talk to others as well as read what's happening. It's a bit overwhelming at first, but you'll get used to it eventually. You're basically playing a text-based game and Hotline Miami at the same time. You either start off queued pre-game with your job preferences or late taking whatever position is available. There's several roles to pick from, with the game doing a great job in covering what you would expect on a corporate space station. There's command, security, medical, science, engineering, supply, service, and synthetics. There are less serious roles like clown, mime, chef, and even a bartender because everyone likes to get drunk, even in space. Each department has a head with a captain on top. A lot of servers have unique roles too, and while some roles seem more fun than others, each comes with their own learning curve and responsibilities. I started off playing cargo technician, miner, chef, bartender, janitor, and other minor roles to first get a grasp of the game. I recommend you start off this way too. Roles where you still have something to do, but the station won't literally explode if you don't do your job properly, which happens often. While something like captain or head security seems fun and powerful, all access and lots of guns, it takes a lot of knowledge and skill to be played optimally. You also become quite the target. If you don't want to know the most basic of mechanics, then skip here. Good, they're gone now. While I feel the interface is fairly straightforward, it can be a bit overwhelming to start with, so I'll give you a quick rundown of most common things on your interface from left to right. Keep in mind that interfaces will vary from server to server as well as species. First off is what your character is wearing, followed by your belt, ID, and PDA. There's a lot of armor and different types of clothing throughout the game affecting your speed, your physical, energy, and environmental protection, as well as what you can hold. Your ID shows your name and occupation, as well as giving you access to departments you're meant to be in. Your PDA is mainly for contacting others privately, but also has a few other minor uses. You then have your backpack, which holds items. This game has a lot of in-depth storage, so you can put an item in a box, that box into a bag, and hide that bag in a closet somewhere. Then there's your hands, which can hold two separate things or just one big thing like an axe. This is your main way of interacting with someone in the game. Left click is to use your hands, whether you're interacting with someone, opening a door, using a computer, or fighting. right click brings up a context menu. This makes it easier to pick up something from a pile, or so you can activate your suit sensors so people know when you've been murdered. Shift click examines what you click on. Control click will drag someone or something. Clicking someone with medicine will help them, while obviously a knife will just hurt them. Since it's annoying to click to swap between your hands, I recommend using hotkey mode, which you can turn on with the tab button, since it makes swapping between options a lot easier. X will swap your hands, E equips or stores an item, Q drops it, Z activates it, and R throws it. T has your character talk, and on station there's multiple radio channels varying on your occupation, but semicolon is the default station-wide one. This mode also lets you move around with the WASD keys rather than arrow keys, which I think helps a lot. Next is your pockets, which can store small objects. You then have a resist, which can be pressed to break out of restraints. There's then the 4 intent types: friendly, disarm, grab, and harm. These are pretty obvious in what they do. There's a big difference between clicking on someone with friendly intent and with harm intent, since friendly will hug, help up, or perform CPR, while the other will just attack. Disarm is good for making people drop their weapons and knocking them over, while grab is for throwing, slamming, and choking people. Hotkey mode also lets you select these intents with numbers 1 to 4 rather than clicking. Since this game is so click intensive for interaction and combat, learning which keys do what and using them saves you a lot of time and helps you go from being a helpless player to semi-competent. Rest is simply to lie down, which will make you defenseless. You need to rest to lie down on a surgery table, and it also stops you from taking up space, meaning you can cram a lot more people in an escape pod. You can toggle between run and walk. It's generally better to go slower if the floor is slippery or there's a hazard ahead. There's a fair few other hotkeys and shortcuts in the game, but I just wanted to cover the basics so that if you jump into the game now, you won't be helpless for your first time. If you want to know more, check out a server's respective wiki. Now that the basics are over, let's get into the core gameplay. Everyone has a job. Chefs cook, security secures, and janitors clean. Some jobs are a lot more important than others though, and a lot more in-depth too. Lawyer, librarian, and chaplain are pretty useless though, so play as those if you want no responsibility at all when starting off. Engineers can build nearly anything and are responsible for maintaining the station's power. It'll vary from server to server, but this involves complicated processes of setting them up. The safest is solar energy, and then moves on to black holes and supermatters for more powerful and deadlier sources. If you don't set up any power at the start of a round, the station will run out of power eventually and everyone will hate you. If you set up the power wrong, the station will blow up and everyone will hate you. There's also atmospherics to make sure the station has oxygen, but it's mostly used for gassing and burning people alive. Medical mostly focuses on healing people that keep trying to kill each other, but you can also clone recently deceased, make chemicals that heal people or melt their skin, alter genetics to give people superpowers or turn them into a monkey, and there's virology to give people a virus that lets them breathe in space and never hungry again, or you can make one that will just kill them in a horrible way. Science sees you testing on aliens, building robots and mechs, researching new items, and creating bombs. AI and cyborgs have you serving the crew in a variety of ways. Since they need to know a bit about everything, it's an experienced role to play. One of the most defining features is the need to follow the synthetics rule set, which can vary but usually is Asimov's 3 laws of robotics. That's the most mechanically in-depth departments and roles. Command manages it all and security beats up wrongdoers. Or anyone really. And keep in mind that a lot of servers whitelist important roles for new accounts. This is to prevent clueless players and griefers being the captain. It's usually time-based though, so they'll unlock eventually. Supply and service are just there to fill in the gaps. People want to get drunk, they don't want the floor covered in blood, they need to eat eventually, and the botanist usually just makes drugs. And of course you have a clown, because why not? While I feel I've explained the basics alright, the best way to learn is to just jump right into it. Pick a server, open up guides on a wiki, and go at your own pace. Don't be afraid to ask other players, mentors or admins for help if you're unsure. It's how I learned, and it's definitely the best way to go about it. Now, you have all these roles, and it's already so complicated and relies on dozens of internet strangers working together. There's bound to be accidents, griefers, jerk co-workers, and just confusing mechanics in general. On top of this, you have randomized game modes. The most common game mode types are antagonist ones. A few players are randomly selected to achieve certain nefarious objectives, usually with freedom to achieve this however they desire. The most common of these is traitors, who have to kill, steal, and sabotage. Think of it as werewolf or mafia. If you're not familiar with those, think of Town of Salem or Trouble in Terrace Town, with the knowing minority against the unknowing majority. You can access a secret store through your PDA for special gear to give you an edge. On top of the complication of trying to keep a large space station running, the crew has to survive against players who are going to ruin your day. Or sometimes they just kill everyone. It really depends on each server's rules for behaviour. Some want you to roleplay everything and focus just on your objectives, while other servers will give antagonists a free pass to do whatever they want. Other modes consist of Double Agent. It's like Traitor, but more spy vs spy, where the goals are to kill and acquire documents from other agents. Changeling, think of a thing, an alien with regenerative powers which can appear as anyone with absorbed, and becomes more powerful as it devours more people. Blob, it's a giant blob which destroys everything. This can be hard for players that aren't familiar with their map, and hard for the crew if they don't work together, since it's only harmed by heat and the coldness of space. Revolutionaries, a small group of individuals have to lead the crew in a revolution against the station's heads. They can convert civilians and need to ensure all heads of staff are dead or off of the station. Gangs, similar to revolutionaries in terms of converting civilians, but usually 2 to 3 gangs vie for control of a station, defending their leaders and base, tagging areas to gain more control and points. Cult, similar to revolutionaries, but members use dark magic to convert people, acquire powers, dark servants, and eventually summon their dark god Narc, who then just destroys everything. Wizard, a magic man comes down to the station to cause anarchy. One player gets to choose from a variety of magic powers to achieve their goals. They usually just give the crew magic items who then kill each other. Nuclear emergency, a squad of operatives infiltrate the station to acquire nuclear codes and to detonate a bomb on the station, killing everyone. Malfunction, the station's AI and cyborgs have malfunctioned and need to take control of the station, all the while purging the station of its crew. These are the main game modes you'll experience. The rotation varies from server to server and some servers have their own unique game modes. Last thing to mention regarding antagonists is that certain jobs can't start off as antagonists. This is partly because of balance and some crews starting with loyalty implants. Obviously a traitor captain would be too easy, and a security officer can't be a revolutionary because they're loyal to command. The rules for this once again vary from server to server, especially the use of loyalty implants. But this is to just have you understand why you can't spawn as a head of security changeling on most servers. Sometimes there will also be an extended game mode, which plays endlessly with no antagonist just so the crew can focus more on their jobs, role-playing, and experience the various random events of the game. And off of the Station Z level you find lots of more interesting things to explore. These areas vary from Easter eggs to whole new places that you can explore, fighting aliens and finding cool tech. One fun recent experience that highlights how emergent the game is was when I spawned as a boring old cargo technician, although this time I was a traitor. It had been a while since I played as one, so I wanted to make it last. My objectives were to kill Len Riker, the roboticist, and to download 30 research nodes. I wasn't too sure on how to get these research nodes, so I decided to focus on my target instead. Problem is, they're on the other side of the station. While I could buy some cool trader items, go in and kill my target, I risk a chance of getting my ass kicked as well as getting caught. So I decide to bide my time instead. I take a look around the station. Some other traders already started causing chaos pretty early on. I come across the captain in medbay. He kept getting stung by bees, so he doesn't really come across as that bright of a leader. Noticing that there's not many security officers on the station, I offer him my services. He accepts. Rather than getting security gear and killing him or my target straight away, I decide to gain his trust. Keep in mind this round had an AI, who can access all of the station's cameras, as well as a few cyborgs, so I had to play this slowly and safely. Later he tells me that the head of security has been killed by a suspected traitor, who happens to come to the brig shortly after. We end up fighting, I save the captain's life, we detain and proceed to murder the attacker. Gaining his trust, the captain appoints me as the new head of security. This was about half an hour in. By this time, another traitor damaged a fair bit of the station, leading to the shuttle being called, but I hadn't even seen my target once. So initially, I apprehend the first person who called the shuttle and killed the second. I nearly died the second time because I stupidly forgot to stun someone in close quarters, but I survived due to being loaded with guns and flashes. The second person had also stolen the captain's ID to get into the bridge, so he thanks me for once again helping him. The AI temporarily became subverted and began emptying the station of oxygen, but I'm lucky enough to get to the head of security's hard suit and make it to evac. This was an hour in and I hadn't found my target once, so I decided I might as well wait at the evacuation. Turns out they died, likely from lack of oxygen or explosions. While I didn't kill my target directly, it still counts. I'm not the best at fighting in the game, and Australian internet doesn't help either, so this round, rather than going guns blazing, I decided to manipulate this somewhat clueless captain to my advantage, prolonging the game and removing innocent crew members to ensure the station becomes more dangerous over time. Being the head of security, none of the crew questioned my actions, as they gained the trust of both the captain and the AI. I didn't buy any trader gear. While a lot of it is super cool, I usually just get caught with it. This story isn't to say look how good I am at the game, because I am pretty mediocre, and this is a pretty simple round for an experienced player, but it's rather to show what options are available for you to achieve your goals. You never know what's going to happen in a round of Space Station 13, and the odds of rounds feeling the same as others is extremely unlikely given all the variables that the game has. I've said a lot of things vary between servers a few times now, and that's because what server you play on does influence your experience significantly. Each server's rules will differ as well as their code. Some servers focus a lot more on role-playing your character along with the rest of the crew, as well as taking your job more seriously, while other servers focus less on role-playing and more on the chaos and action that Space Station 13 is renowned for. Originally, I was going to go through all the popular servers, but it would end up being a very subjective list. So instead, I'll highlight the main differences that all share. If you want to know more about a specific server, play on there and check out its forum. One of the main differences between servers is some use different maps, so you'll often feel fairly lost if you swap servers frequently, although there's always a map on the wiki to use. Some of these aim to improve the old station, redesign it completely, or take you to a new setting, like underwater. It's hard to get used to these new maps, but it's usually pretty fun to explore one you know little about. And I've mentioned different code bases a few times. It's difficult to explain all the differences, but some servers retweak combat, chemistry, health, and countless other mechanics to their own preferences. It's easiest to test out the new mechanics yourself or read about them on the server's wiki. And some servers vary in tick rate, meaning some servers inherently play a lot faster while others feel like they're turn-based. Lower tick rates lend themselves to a focus on role-playing like in Base Station and Aurora, while TG, Goon, and Hippie have very high tick rates in comparison for fast and fluid gameplay, so expect people to shoot first and ask questions later. And servers with a tick rate in between like Paradise and Yog Station obviously want a balance between roleplay and action. There's frequently drama regarding people not liking a server's admin team or whether high or low roleplay is the best choice to play on. But coming from someone who's played on a majority of the servers and has their own personal preferences, there is no best server. Each has their own pros and cons. If you're new, I'd say check out as many as possible until you've found your favourite server, and be sure to follow their rules, otherwise you might find yourself getting banned before you have the chance to even like the server. I've had a lot of great rounds from just role playing with others, and then there's been times when the round has been one long battle. The point is, both can be a lot of fun. The only time I've had issues playing was because of griefers, power gamers, or bad admins. But these are a minority occurrence. The only bad experiences you can get from the game itself is when it freezes, lags, crashes, or it's just a boring round. But it is hard to be bored in Space Station 13 when you can make a lot of your own fun. Now with the regular Space Station 13 servers out of the way, there's a lot of unique spin-offs that warrant a look at. The biggest is Colonial Marines. It's honestly rare to see less than 100 people playing this. Based on the Alien universe, it focuses on the Colonial Marines' first encounter with xenomorphs. Being focused a lot on combat and an authentic military experience, the server maintains a standard of roleplay and chain of command to keep the atmosphere strong. While a lot of servers change what they want to be often, Colonial Marines is always about aliens killing soldiers. Sometimes your humans win. There's just something so immersive and enjoyable about waking out of cryo, gearing up, being debriefed and sent down with your squad to be then picked apart by aliens. It does a great job at capturing the lethality of the aliens, and everyone's role-playing efforts really adds to make the rounds engaging. Next up is Fallout 13. If you ever wanted to be a part of a legion and crucify the NCR or get mauled to death by ghouls, this is the game for you. It features most of the game's factions for players to represent, and it alternates between intense faction battles and small roleplay encounters with other players. There's a lot of exploration of vaults and buildings to experience, with you and your makeshift team frequently being attacked by mutants, robots, or other players. And here's something I discovered as I was making this review, a spin-off set in 1713 Caribbean, where you either play as a Carib native, pirates, or as a European colonist or naval member. It's got a pretty heavy focus on role-playing, but given its historical basis, there's a fair bit of diplomacy and combat to experience. There's game modes just for fighting on ships, and other ones for role-playing as settlers. It's a really new server, but definitely a fun experience. And I think this just goes to show that Space Station 13 mechanics can work with any setting or time period, and how creative some people can be. And finally, there's Life Web. If Space Station 13 can be considered difficult, confusing, and all around weird, I'm not sure what that says about Life Web. It's Russian, but it's the easiest way to start off. It has this claustrophobic, neo-feudal setting. Everything's dark and weird, and although it's not scary, it definitely presents a feeling of unease and mystery as you play. It adds a lot more mechanics, is generally more brutal, and is just overall an odd experience. If you don't have a Beyond account made before 2015, you have to donate $15 worth of cryptocurrency. Although if you have a friend that plays, they can also vouch for you. And the servers are also only hosted on the weekend, so it's a pretty exclusive and limited experience. But I think it might just be worth your patience, because the textures, sound design, writing, new mechanics, and everything else is just extremely impressive. You even have your own stats, so it's a lot more like a classic role-playing game. I want to play more of it, but I think it's going to take some time to know what I'm actually doing, especially since I have to wait for the weekends to play it. It's not something I can really recommend, since most people would have to donate to play it in the first place, but it's something interesting and worth watching or at least reading about. There are also a lot of other games that try to be a spiritual successor to Space Station 13 or remake it on a different engine. Not many of them are successful. I feel one of the main reasons why Space Station 13 is so popular and successful is that at the cost of its top-down perspective, graphics, interface, and overall performance, it's able to facilitate great mechanics like its atmospherics, power, chemical, and health systems. The logistics of bringing all those concepts into a 3D remake or just something that looks and runs a lot better would cost a lot more time and money than people maybe expect. Not to mention that Space Station 13 has been built upon for over a decade by thousands of people that enjoy the game, meaning not even a professional game company can make something as good or innovative as Space Station 13 anytime soon. I'd love to play Space Station 13 on an engine that isn't as old as me, sure, but Space Station 13 is already one of the most fun games I've ever played. And while a lot of servers are open source, the engine Beyond is not. So people do their best to improve a game, they still have to dance around the limitations of the engine. I feel that covers pretty much everything I've wanted to say. You could legitimately make a 5-hour video on Space Station 13 and still not cover everything. It's a game I recommend to everyone, and I hope this video has helped you understand it better, so your first time isn't as crazy and confusing as mine. If you want to know more about the game, I'll have some links in the description of where to get Beyond, some YouTubers I recommend watching to learn more about the game, and some other relevant links.